Despite the time on the clock that it says 10 till 9, we know in reality it's 5 after 9, and Mr. Anderson promises to get that clock fixed before the next meeting. Welcome to your Board of County Commissioners meeting for February 25th, 2003. If you'll rise for the invocation and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Father, we never know how our lives will touch another. Help us to be an example of your love, and we thank you for the continual promise of new beginnings. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is the minutes of February 18th.
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Number 2 is where we have proclamations and presentations. I don't believe we have any today, but Mr. Anderson does have some announcements to be read. And Doug, why don't you do those?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council will hold a presentation on results of the Regional Land Use Study for St. Lucie and Martin counties for local planning agency, planning, and zoning members and interested officials and citizens on Wednesday, February 26, 2003 at 7 p.m. at the Port St. Lucie Community Center, Room C on Rosso Boulevard. That's across from City Hall in Port St. Lucie. Spring training opens at Thomas J. White Stadium on February 27th at 1:10 p.m. with the New York Mets versus the St. Louis Cardinals. And the County Commissioners will be throwing out the first pitch. The Board of County Commissioners will attend the St. Lucie County Fair opening ceremonies on February 27th at 5:30 p.m. at the new fairground location at the intersection of Midway Road and Okeechobee Road. And once again, I just can't say enough about it. It's just turned out to be a beautiful facility. The 38th Annual St. Lucie County Fair will open on February 28, 2003 at 4 p.m. and will close on March 9th. And as I said before, the fair will be held at the new fairgrounds. In honor of Zora Neale Hurston Day in St. Lucie County, there will be festivities held on February 28th at the Zora Neale Hurston Library on Avenue D in Fort Pierce from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Board of County Commissioners and the City of Fort Pierce City Commissioners will attend a Fort Pierce Parks bus tour on March 27th beginning at 2 p.m. The purpose of this meeting will be to tour county and city parks in the Fort Pierce area. The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council will present results of the Regional Land Use Study for St. Lucie and Martin counties at the joint St. Lucie and Martin County MPO meeting on March 28th at 10:30 a.m. in the St. Lucie County Commission Chambers, which is this room here, 2300 Virginia Avenue, Fort Pierce, Florida. Finally, one other announcement that's not on here is that at 2:30 today, there is going to be a press conference held at the former MECO aircraft facility at the county airport to announce the new businesses coming in there, which we'll discuss on this morning's agenda.
Any other announcements? If not, we'll open now for general public comment. If any member of the audience wishes to address the board on any item whatsoever, we don't have any public hearings this morning, so if there's any item on the agenda or anything else on your mind, please come forward and state your name and give us your comments. Seeing no one, we'll close the public part of the meeting and move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a series of items that are generally housekeeping items, usually non-controversial, and there are quite a few of them, so we allow any commissioner to pull any item if there's any questions or comments or separate vote necessary. Today we have quite a few items on the consent agenda. Are there any commissioners that would like to pull any item for separate discussion or vote?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to discuss C8B in regards to the no U-turns at Reserve Boulevard and 95.
8B. Who, Mr. Murphy, who, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll begin this. There are a lot of problems at the intersection when you come off of I-95 going south, then turning left onto St. Lucie West Boulevard. And what is occurring out there is that during rush hour, which occurs several times during the day, traffic is actually backing up onto I-95. And they can't even get off I-95. What is happening is that automobiles are jumping the line. Those automobiles that actually want to turn left, they're going off to the right, heading towards the reserve. And I've witnessed this on many occasions myself, as others have. And what they're doing is they're taking a right, and then they're making U-turns, and then coming back to go east. They're going west and take a U-turn and go west. And what is happening is they're cutting in front of traffic going east and west, plus cars trying to go south on the ramp going off of St. Lucie West Boulevard. It's a mess out there. And I talked with our traffic folks and law enforcement. Law enforcement's also recognized the problem. The law enforcement said their hands are tied unless we approve no U-turn signs. And this is to be able to police that, to try to stop this from occurring. Scott, I don't know if you have anything else.
For the record, Scott Herring, St. Lucie County Road and Bridge Manager. Commissioner Barnes, Chairman Barnes, Commissioner Hutchinson, I think Mr. Anderson summarized it properly. I've been out there myself. You can actually see ruts off the pavement where vehicles are making the U-turns. It's not an area that's designed for U-turns. That's why we brought this agenda item forward today.
All right. I have no problem with moving forward with this, but my concern is the fact that this is just a Band-Aid to a real problem, because evidently if you're not going to allow the U-turns, then the traffic is going to continue to be backed up, if not further, onto 95. So my question is really, where are we with the state money? I know in the past we've applied to the state for funding to revamp that ramp, but I've also been told just recently that there may be the possibility there's enough road that's paved that could we consider actually going in and restriping it to allow for 2 lanes? Has that idea been looked at?
Chairman Barnes, Commissioner Hudson, we haven't looked at that specific idea. I know at this point in time the Florida Department of Transportation will be conducting a signal warrant study on that ramp to determine whether or not it meets signal warrant requirements, and I believe it's a condition of the development order of both the Reserve and St. Lucie West to provide for signalization at that ramp at such time as it meets the criteria. But we will be more than happy to look at your suggestion.
If we could, and Mr. Anderson, if you could just respond to where we are with the state and asking for funding towards widening that entire, I guess, ramp.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hutchinson, over the past several years, I've had discussions with Tom Berry. Is he still the Secretary of Transportation?
Yeah.
I think he, maybe till the end of this month.
Okay, well anyway, over the past several years I've had conversations with Tom Berry, the Secretary of Transportation, regarding this problem, and he uses it himself, as he has family in Port St. Lucie, and he's well aware of it. And what I'll do is I will contact his office to see where the state does stand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Hutchinson, I'm probably going to vote against this because I'm one of those people that can't stand to wait a half mile down that ramp. You get one person up there that doesn't want to go, and they hold up traffic and actually make traffic hazardous because, as you've said, it backs onto 95. And people that are taking right-hand turns and then doing a U-turn, actually, you may not like what they're doing, but they're actually moving the traffic along a little faster because I bet most of us who have been there have done the same thing, and I want to continue to do that when the traffic is backed up a half mile. I don't know about the rest of you, but especially if you have a semi that's trying to turn left. They will just clog traffic for minutes at a time. So I think what we really need to do is jump on the state to somehow fix the situation.
Chairman Barnes, the only comment I would have on that is instead of you making the U-turns there, I would prefer you to go use the traffic circle at the entrance where the movement could be made safely. I mean, if people...
Oh, I don't turn in front of people, you know.
But a lot people are turning in front of it.
When our roads are clogged, people do what they have to do, and they'll continue to do it, and they'll find a way around your U-turn sign, and you're not going to put a deputy there all day long. So the problem is with the roadway, not the way people are trying to use it, in my book.
Mr. Barnes, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, could I ask, have we talked with the school board at all? I know their buses sometimes sit out on 95. Have we talked with them and got any input as to any suggestions they may have? Because, of course, they're all turning left, as they use that ramp. And that's my concern. I'm like Commissioner Barnes. When you've got school buses sitting out on 95 at a dead stop.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hutchison, we haven't specifically addressed this item with the school board. I will contact them about that, and I'll also make the Department of Transportation aware, and I'll get the information from the school board of when the buses are actually using it, so that can be factored into the signal warrant study.
How long does a signal warrant study last?
Mr. Chairman, they'll collect data for approximately a week, and the DOT has a consultant do this. Then the consultant will crunch the numbers. I anticipate the study being sometime in March. We would probably find out the results late March to mid-April.
And then what?
If it meets criteria, then we'd begin the design and permitting process and talk to the two developments about funding the installation of the traffic signal.
Mr. Chair. But it's not just a signal, though. You need to improve the roadway itself. Would that come with it? I mean, if you still have just one lane, the traffic's still going to get backed up.
Mr. Chairman,
you need to take the traffic that's going right, direct it to the right, and the traffic that's going left, direct it to the left, not have them all stay in single file.
I agree with your statement. However, I think the traffic signal will be a short-term solution while we pursue the longer-term solution of the necessary construction. As Commissioner Hutchison suggested, we'll also look at possibly doing some type of restriping out there to temporarily increase the capacity. But construction of major improvements out there to the overpass, I wouldn't even want to guess at the cost for that and the time frame associated with that.
Mr. Chair, well, that's a question I had is, if we let DOT know about maybe a second ramp going past it so people can get on with the traffic?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Brune, yes, we will have DOT look at that option also.
Well, can you tell us that by prohibiting U-turns that we're not going to just back the traffic up farther on the I-95? This is fine for the safety considerations up there on the top of the hill, but for people who are stranded out on I-95 with traffic going by at 80 miles an hour, it's not doing anything for their safety.
Mr. Chairman, I think by prohibiting U-turns in this area, I think people will rapidly go and use the traffic circle and come out that way. And I think that will do more to keep the traffic flowing than people who are making a U-turn in an area where other drivers aren't expecting to see a vehicle making a U-turn.
Okay. I just don't think. All right. Let me vote against it. Any other discussion before we. Why don't we take a separate vote on this item? Is there a motion to approve or disapprove?
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to give it a try, but I would like for staff to bring this back, at least to monitor and bring it back at least within 6 months so we can see if the problem, if it actually becomes worse by doing this, so we can address it immediately. So I'll make a motion to approve under that basis.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just clarify that item 2A has been pulled. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, right now we're just voting on this one item, is my understanding.
Yes. Why not? Okay.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Brune?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Coward?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Hutchison?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
No, ma'am. Why don't we then take the rest of the consent agenda? Are there any other items for separate discussion or separate vote? Or do you want to take the rest of the consent agenda? And which one was pulled? 3A? 2A. 2A. Okay, so 2A we won't be voting on today.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further discussion, I'd recommend approval of the remainder of the consent agenda minus item 2A.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. That takes care of the consent agenda. There are no public hearings for today, so we'll move to 6A, Fort Pierce Harbor Advisory Committee. And there's one applicant, and we have several applications.
Mr. Chairman, while we're sending out the ballots, can I ask staff, I noticed one of these was a former member of the committee. Do we know what his reason for leaving at the time that he'd left?
Mr. Chairman, I
He's
think you're
reapplying
referring
again.
to Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson was my former appointee, and I have replaced him with Mr. Howard Conklin.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have the results of the voting. Commissioner Brune voted for Peter Stryker. Commissioner Coward voted for Peter Stryker. Commissioner Lewis voted for Peter Stryker. Commissioner Hutchinson voted for Kevin Jackson. Commissioner Barnes voted for Peter Stryker. Kevin Jackson received 1 vote. Peter Stryker received 4 votes. Peter Stryker is the new member.
So we don't need to take a formal motion. That is the motion in action. Okay. 6B, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Who's taking this item?
I'll begin, Mr. Chair. The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council has requested an increase in their dues from 33 cents per capita to 43 cents per capita, effective 2003-2004, and then after that, annual cost of living adjustments. And I think Michael Bush is here to address that.
Okay. I saw a gentleman raise his hand back there. Do you have a comment for the board? Oh, well, welcome and congratulations.
There's a meeting today at 1:15.
You'll get your first paycheck today. Thank you. Mr. Bush.
Michael Bush, Executive Director with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, for the record. I am before you today again to ask what my board has asked me to do with each of the county commissioners in our 4-county region, and that's to ask you to consider a 10-cent per capita dues increase that would become effective for 2003-2004. The second part of that, as Mr. Anderson noted, was to have an escalator attached to CPI that would take effect year 2004, year 2005, and it would be adjusted accordingly. I can give you some more color about why the council has asked if you'd like, or you can ask me questions. I mean, what's the chair's pleasure and the board's pleasure?
You've met with all the commissioners?
Yes, sir.
I certainly had a chance to ask you all the questions I needed to. Does anybody have any other questions of Mr. Bush?
Mr. Chairman, this is a question I'd asked yesterday, and I told him, Mr. Bush, that I would bring it up today. I have no problem with giving the per capita increase, but in discussing, in all fairness, it's strictly the counties that are being charged, and being that the cities have representation, voting power, and so forth, and yet I found out that they do not contribute at all. I would ask that we basically just approve the increase, but the CPI level go back and see if the cities would be willing to contribute.
Don't we, what, don't we use money collected in the city to pay for this, though? Mr. Anderson, where does this come from? General fund or?
Mr. Chairman, over here. It comes out of the general fund. It comes out of my budget. I budget for it every year, the dues for the RPC, and it comes out of the general fund.
But we are not using the MSTU?
No, we're not. No,
all right, so in essence, these are funds that city residents pay into as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Hutchinson, but if we already collecting money from the city residents, I'm not sure I'd want to go back to the city governments for more money.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think that'd be a double hit on the incorporated areas. I think everyone's paying equally across the county now through the general fund, and I think we should continue in that fashion.
It's certainly the argument that I've heard about that issue, but I mean, it's your choice on that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I've been pretty tough on the Regional Planning Council since I've been on here. I think a lot of what they do is a duplication of what our staff does, and I'm not real quick to increase their budget than what we've budgeted for them for the last 15 years. If the state's not going to increase it, why would we increase it?
Good question, and I wasn't sure we'd have to get to that, but I think from a selfish standpoint, we probably would want to increase it because they've been doing an awful lot in this area, in the city of Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, and the county. And maybe you can spend 3 or 4 minutes talking about your efforts up here in the last 10 years.
Sure.
And maybe not go through everything, but I think all of us need to be reminded of all you've helped us accomplish up here, because it is quite a bit. And I think you've done things that the city and county staff are too overwhelmed with day-to-day work to accomplish themselves. Would you just give us kind of a summary of?
Sure. In addition to the 16 DRIs that we've worked on.
Would you tell us what a DRI is? Because 90% of the people watching have no idea what a DRI is.
DRIs are developments of regional impact, very large building permits, to keep it real simple.
And what is your role in reviewing their plans?
Coordinating the entire process. From start to finish, actually working with the counties and the cities and with the investors to make a report and recommendations, essentially, that serve as a basis for what usually the local government finishes up, which is a development order and an ordinance that authorizes that development. So we spend an awful lot of time, an awful lot of hours working through all these issues so that you don't have to. We try and get everything resolved before it even gets here.
What type of issues are we talking about?
Water, sewer, land use, traffic, schools, police, fire, water management, endangered species, upland and wetland habitat issues, you name it. I mean, there's about 26 different issue areas that we get into. Housing is another one.
And you've reviewed over the last, how many years, 16 of these large developments?
30 square miles of development. And
just in St. Lucie County?
Just in St. Lucie County, and about 50,000 residential units, about 7 million square feet of retail, about 10 million square feet of industrial, 13 golf courses, a 200-bed hospital, 2,700 hotel rooms, again, over about 30 square miles. And that's one of the things we do. That's actually not the most exciting thing we do. But
tell us about the exciting things you do for us.
The charrettes that we've performed, we've done about 10 charrettes, actually in the last 6 or 8 years, 10 charrettes. And I started to put value to some of this so you can
understand. A charrette is working with either the local government or a Main Street and the local government, or in fact a county, to either do redevelopment or solve problems. Like the regional attenuation facility was a little different charrette that we held for the 10 Mile Creek, but I really believe that formed the basis and for doing that and got us way ahead on the SERP list of projects for the district. But most of that work is done in cities and towns and unincorporated areas that need redevelopment. And we've spent a lot of time up here. To the tune, I estimated, to about $400,000 worth of work in the last 6 or 8 years.
We finished an annexation feasibility study for South Hutchinson Island a couple years ago when the island residents wanted to annex out of the county and form their own town. That was actually at the request of Senator Pruitt. $25,000 effort. The Fort Pierce St. Lucie County annexation effort, which I wish would have gone better. That's about a $20,000 effort. The regional transportation study, which we're undertaking now, which should be finished in March, takes in almost 100 square miles in South St. Lucie County and South Port St. Lucie, or it's not South Port St. Lucie, Port St. Lucie. We estimate that to be about a $65,000 effort. The regional land use study, which your county administrator had talked about, I estimate it's about a $360,000 effort of resources bringing into St. Lucie and Martin County. About $150,000 of that will probably be spent in St. Lucie County. We're starting actually very shortly. The county will have access to a $550,000 revolving loan fund for small businesses in St. Lucie County. You'll actually have access to about 265 of that. That's the beginning of a revolving loan fund that we hope for small businesses will continue over the next decade. Talked about the DRIs, all our work with your hazardous material and first responder, all the training that we do, all the work that we do with your local emergency planning committee and with your emergency management director to complete required plans by the state. We have been designated an economic development district in this region. That's something we worked hard at, so that every time you get a grant from EDA, you get a 10% bump just because you're in the district. And then the brownfields. I don't know what your inventory is for brownfields.
What's a brownfield?
Polluted sites with either petroleum or other hazardous materials. We're trying to bring into the region a $400,000 fund for assessments so businesses actually can have access to that money, or local governments could have access to that money to do assessments on sites and get them cleaned up. That's the first step. EPA is looking at another $1 million for us in the next 2 years. If in fact we're successful at getting the assessment grant, then we're eligible actually for cleanup. So, I mean, there's a long list of things that we do. We definitely do dirty work for the Department of Community Affairs. There's no doubt about that. The DRIs and the local comp plan amendments. Nobody likes to see their plans second-guessed, or nobody likes to see comments about, well, did you think about this or that? But that is a contract that we take each year, and I talked to Commissioner Brune and Commissioner Hutchinson about that. That's a contract each year. It contributes about a third of our money to the council's budget. And, so that's sort of the list.
I think you left out, maybe you mentioned it, but you left out the charrettes you had in the city of Fort Pierce, Avenue D, the port area,
Orange Avenue, downtown.
Having lived here just about all my life, I don't think Fort Pierce really started turning around until you had that charrette. What was it, a dozen years ago, 10 years ago?
That was actually Mayor Danahauer,
right,
and Doris Tillman, and Representative Pruitt and Representative Minton that actually got us invited to do that.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
I've seen the progress. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm strongly in support of this recommendation. Not only the extensive list that's already been provided, but I actually have a list myself that goes from there. I mean, the two components, going back to the issue Commissioner Brune raised about duplicating service, I actually see it as a complementary. Our staff has a number of issues to deal with at the local level, and Michael Busha and his staff are dealing with the larger issues, the regional issues of DRIs and so forth. So I see them working in a complementary fashion, reviewing those larger projects and overseeing, larger projects that go under the auspices of the Corps of Engineers or the Water Management District or State Department of Land Planning, and on and on and on. But I really see that design studio that you have as something that we do not, and it's been critical in helping with all those different charrettes you mentioned. And I think the other issue that's really important to me is the grant dollars that you have helped bring into this area. I think is extremely important. The microloan program you mentioned is another program that I'm highly supportive of. We've been trying to promote economic development, particularly in small business areas, and your staff is out there working with local banks and helping create this microloan program. And it's another exceptional program. The other two projects that didn't even get mentioned was your assistance with the Environmental Learning Center. I believe you came in and worked free of charge. Having dealt with that project myself, I believe you worked free of charge or no additional cost to come in and spend weeks putting the charrette together with Thousand Friends of Florida for the Environmental Learning Center. You also worked on the 10 Mile Creek project. I mean, the list just goes on, and I think the annual cost right now that we've been paying you is equivalent to one senior planner position plus benefits. So all of that work we've been discussing, basically for the price of one of our senior planners. I think it's a bargain, and I think that we haven't had an increase in these dues since, I believe, 1987 or so.
15 years.
Yeah, so I think it's time for us to step up to the plate and provide some adequate funding. I think you've also, while the region has grown, your staff has actually declined by a third. So we need to get adequate staff back in place and get that urban design studio back in place to continue to assist us in doing all these good projects. So I do hope we do approve this morning.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm not asking to eliminate the funding. I'm asking them to live within their means. The state has said we don't need to fund them for 15 years or increase it, and then they come back to us, which is what a whole lot of organizations are going to be doing come in budget year. You're talking about PACE. You're talking about all different things are going to be coming back saying the state didn't fund us, but we're a good program. So I'm saying they need to live within their means. They can live with the current amount of money they're getting. They indicate they want to increase staff and go into new areas. Well, do what you originally were meant to do in the beginning, and don't just start being an array of every service out there. Because I still believe when people do DRIs, they have to come to Dennis Murphy, and he's got to approve it and read over it and do the whole thing all over again. So I'm asking that we just fund it for the current amount of funding it calls for now.
Any other discussion before we do a motion and count the votes? Is there a motion either way?
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend approval of item 6B.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, is that staff recommendation to include the cost of living? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Would you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Commissioner Brune?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Hutchison?
No, ma'am. If it had included just the increase on the per capita, I would vote for it. But since it's including the CPI, and I understand Indian River County also did not vote in that point,
They did not.
I'm voting no.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes, ma'am. I think the CPI would be, what, a penny a year? Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coward?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Move on now to bi-weekly reports.
Thank you.
And not sure why can we save from now on the bi-weekly to the very end, because we have staff people waiting to hear us talk, and while we talk. So actually, why don't we take the bi-weekly at the very end of the meeting today? Indrio Scrub, can we take that now?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is item 7 on your agenda, Indrio Scrub Preserve. It's a Florida Communities Trust project where the county and the state, through the Florida Communities Trust, have cooperated on purchase of a number of environmentally sensitive lands. This is one of those potential sites. We do have a conceptual agreement with the Florida Communities Trust. It's a 50% match. We did offer the property owner $125,000, which is the maximum approved value as determined by the Florida Communities Trust Review Appraiser, and we are obligated to present no more than that amount. The property owner has rejected that offer and submitted a counteroffer of $185,000. There's a letter attached to a packet that indicates that their asking price was $275,000, so they feel like they've reduced their price substantially to $185,000. In view of the program requirements, the county would have to pick up the additional $60,000 plus or minus dollars that would be needed. In other words, the Florida Communities Trust would only pay 50% of the maximum approved value. Anything above that would have to be paid for by the county. If the board were to approve this, the total cost of this property to the county is about $125,000. In the packet is a memorandum from Mr. Fausick describing the Zarate parcel. It's about 5.5 acres. There's about 2.5 acres of good quality scrub. There is a portion of the parcel that's been impacted by four-wheeler or excavation activities, and There are some exotics along the parcel adjacent to the US 1 frontage. This parcel, as proposed, would be used for a nature trail linking the site to the Indrio Savannas. It also possible, perhaps, to use unbuilt portions of Wilcox Road. We're looking into that. There's a map attached that shows the parcel. Mr. Chairman, this particular program was based on voluntary sales. It's not intended to be an involuntary program. We have consistently, at least at a staff level, tried to recommend that the board not go above the approved maximum price. So in that regard, staff would recommend that the board deny the counteroffer. I would point out the board has, on one prior occasion, at least to my knowledge, gone over the maximum value. That was the Paleo Hammock property, but that had significant historic resources that don't appear to be present here. Not to say that this isn't a good piece of property, and not to say that we don't want it. It's just the price is significantly above the maximum, so we recommend denial.
Okay. Any argument with staff recommendation? I don't have any, and I don't hear any, so we'll just take no action. Is that, or do we need a motion to?
I think we probably need to write back formally indicating that the board considered the counteroffer and decided not to accept it.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, sir, to accept staff recommendation.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Why don't we take the additions item, RA1?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll be taking this one. Since June of 1999, county staff has been working with various individuals and companies who were attempting to purchase Lake aircraft in Maine and relocate them to St. Lucie County. And to be honest with you, we had serious doubts that this day would ever come. And we've been keeping you up to speed since 1999. I'm sure you have had your doubts also. However, Mr. Wadi Reem approached us a couple of months ago, and he was in the process of purchasing both Lake aircraft from the state of Maine and MECO Aircraft, the former MECO Aircraft Company in St. Lucie County, which had been owned by the Seminoles. Attached is a draft letter of intent between St. Lucie County and Lanshee Aerospace, which is the company Wadi owns, for an ad valorem tax exemption award, a job growth investment grant agreement 03-02, and a qualified tax industry, or a qualified target industry tax refund program grant awarded through resolution 03-43, which is also attached. Lanshee will relocate to St. Lucie County 70 jobs at 150% of the current average salary wage rate in St. Lucie County. Lanshee Aerospace will have a capital investment for the MECO facility for their equipment of $850,000. Now, this excludes the amount of the investment for Lake aircraft, which will also be relocated here. They will have a 15-year commitment to St. Lucie County, and that should they leave within a 15-year period, any tax exemptions granted to them would be paid back to the county plus interest. Lanshee Aerospace will make as I said, a capital investment of $850,000 in the county initially. In return, the county agrees to provide Lanshee with a job growth incentive grant up to $140,000. They qualify for $2,000 per new job, payable over a 5-year period beginning October 1, 2004, or 12 months after when Lanshee first hires its employees. As you know, this job growth incentive program ranges anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 based upon various bonuses and wage rates. And because of their high wage rate, they're entitled to the $2,000 per job. Lanshee Aerospace salary level commitment is $17.66 per hour. That's the average wage rate that they'll be paying. 75% of the new employees, at least 75%, will be current St. Lucie County residents. They're planning on employing our residents, training our residents to work there. Lanchi Aerospace is applying for the Qualified Target Industry Tax Refund. The state's application requirements include a 20% local match. The required local match for this program is estimated to be $56,000. Concurrent with this request for the Qualified Target Industry funding, Lanchi is requesting that the county approve an ad valorem tax abatement, which I talked about, granting that over, that would be over a 6-year period, I believe. St. Lucie County will conduct a public hearing at a date to be determined for the purpose of considering adoption of an ordinance granting an ad valorem tax abatement to Lanchi in the amount of $25,123. That's the estimated amount that would be used as part of the local match obligation. And that amount would be spread over several years. I believe it's 6 years. And this is an estimated amount based upon their initial investment. The remaining $30,877 of our match would be provided through the general fund revenues. As I said before, we're asking that the letter of intent be approved that is attached here, together with Resolution 03-043, which is for the Qualified Target Industry Tax Refund Program. And Mr. Rahim is here this morning to answer any questions.
Mr. Rahim, why don't you come forward and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, after Doug's boring introduction, a little bit more, over here, a little bit more about what you could be building out at the airport and maybe what attracted you to St. Lucie County. But welcome, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I acquired the Lake Aircraft assets in September of last year, and I had been plugging away working on building aircraft up in Maine, and I was called and asked to take a look at the facility out here. I was too busy, but I said, well, it's Florida, it's winter, I'll come down. And having come down and started looking at the facility out here, what was very attractive about it was a new facility. It had a good setting. It was current. The infrastructure was good, and the infrastructure in Maine needed a little work. So as I started putting the pieces together, it became clear that combining two product lines in one factory in this area could be attractive if I could get some help. And that's where I came to the state and to the county and to see if we could get some help. And we started working the issue and closed on the deal last Wednesday. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building the MECO aircraft, was an acrobatic aircraft. It's one of the very few IFR rated acrobatic aircraft around. Most acrobatic aircraft do not do IFR. IFR being instrument flight rules. That means you can fly through the poor weather. Usually if you're acrobatic, you're not, so it's unique. So we're going to be producing those again. We're going to be spooling up. More importantly, what we are going to do is I'm going to have my other companies license this facility to build Lake aircraft. And we're going to start spooling up to build aircraft here. I spent some time talking with the FAA last Thursday, day after I bought the company, about the process of moving down. It's not just a physical move. It's got a lot of conformity issues and making sure that we don't lose conformity of the Lake aircraft design as we move it down. But they're very excited. They're committed to helping us through the process. They're looking at months. I said I'm looking at weeks, and they're going to work with us. In fact, next Sunday we're going to be bringing down our partially finished hull of the Lake aircraft down here. And we won't be starting on it right away, but we'll at least get it down here and start working on the paperwork process.
What type of airplane is the Lake aircraft?
The Lake is an amphibious aircraft. It's the only FAA certificated amphibious aircraft in the world, single engine, that's in production today. So it's very unique. It's got an international market. For your information, the first aircraft that I sold is being purchased by the U.S. Department of Interior, who has an obligation to provide some sort of environmental monitoring to the Galapagos Islands. They're going to hand it over to the government of Ecuador who is then going to put it in service in the Galapagos Islands. So it'll be the first aircraft out of this factory going to the Galapagos Islands. First one of its kind in there. So that's going to be a unique situation. I want to thank the county and the state. You guys have been very, very helpful in the process. Has
Mr. Anderson treated you okay?
Well, most of the time. But it has the standard for working with business has been very high, and I appreciate that. I worked in Maryland and I worked in Maine in the past, and you need to keep up that mindset, and that will bring more businesses out here.
Well, we're excited about having you. Any comments or questions of Mr. Rahim?
Anybody want to buy an airplane?
We need an amphibious plane,
Yeah.
one that'll get to the Bahamas. Okay, thank you so much. Next up is our biweekly.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need
I'm
to-
sorry, of course.
Mr. Chair, staff does recommend that the board approve the letter of intent, Job Growth Investment Grant Agreement 0302, and the Qualified Target Industry Tax Refund Program, Resolution 03-43, and authorize the chairman to sign the agreements.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to welcome Mr. Rahim to St. Lucie County. I have met you before. I'm very pleased that we've worked out this deal. I also want to compliment our staff for another fine job, and I'll move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. We'll move now to biweekly committee reports. I'll get us started. The Blue Way Advisory Committee, I don't believe we had a meeting. Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Ms. Lewis has been very generous in agreeing to take that over, so I don't know if she made that meeting. Property and homeowners, we had a lively discussion on code enforcement at our last meeting, and also Dan McIntyre was there to explain the proceedings that occurred the night before on the port of Fort Pierce. Why don't we begin with Commissioner Coward?
Okay, the two committees I need to report on are the Fire District and the Regional Planning Council. First, the Fire District. Probably the issue that will be of most interest to this board is the unanimous recommendation from the Fire District to this commission to look into the sale of fireworks. They're recommending that we adopt an ordinance similar to that which is in place in both the city of Port St. Lucie and Fort Pierce, which requires that the sale of fireworks occur in an enclosed structure. So that recommendation is coming forward. The staff was primarily concerned about safety-related issues. So we'll have some more information in the near future to provide to the entire board. Second is the Regional Planning Council. I think the issue of greatest interest was probably the comprehensive plans proposed by Port St. Lucie. I think there's a total of 7, 2 of which this board actually commented on, the LTC Ranch and also the Westchester DRI. The staff had made several objections. The council itself felt that those objections should be noted as comments, which are down a rung, but still noting that issues need to be dealt with in terms of a coordination with St. Lucie County, providing an edge to the urban development as it creeps westward. Those are some of the key issues that were discussed at that time. Those are the only 2 committees I have this morning.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Lewis?
The switch over to the Chamber of Commerce took place after last month. I will be attending a meeting of that today. The Children's Services Council meeting dealt with general Children's Services Council business. Cultural Affairs Council, also business as usual, but I got to tell you that council is taking off. There are all kinds of things happening. I think everybody in the county has met the new executive director, which is a good thing, or he's met them, whichever way you care to look at it, and things are happening in that area. Transportation LCB meets quarterly. We have not had a meeting since our last meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, the only meeting I had was Treasure Coast Regional Planning, and Commissioner Coward's covered that.
And Mr. Chair, the Friends of St. Lucie County Library, we had Mr. Ward, the Executive Director of the Cultural Affairs Council, come talk to us and enlighten us to what they're doing in their organization. And we went over the volunteer luncheon, which will be coming up soon, and I'm sure everyone will be invited. That's it.
Very good. Any other items that we need to bring?
Mr. Chair, just to let the commissioners know that this afternoon, the Florida Seaport Transportation and Economic Development Council, which we're a member of, will be holding their meeting via telephone conference call, which I'll be on the conference call to discuss the various port projects around the state. I'll be reporting back to you what the outcome of that meeting is.
Thank you. Any other business? Or is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.